So, a few days ago, I was woken up by the sound of an air raid siren being triggered by a North Korean missile launch over North Japan, in a scene that felt more like Call of Duty than real life. Like most people, I didn't even know these air raid sirens even existed, and I especially didn't know that Japanese TVs could switch on by themselves. In some ways that was creepier than the missile. But in a state of shock, confusion and general early morning bewilderment, I did what any YouTube person would do, pulled out my phone and filmed it. And having uploaded the video, a few hours later it had over 1 million views on this channel, and it featured on many Facebook pages, including the infamous Unilad page where it got millions more, and everywhere else from the Miami Herald to the World Economic Forum. At one point, the video nearly toppled Taylor Swift from the #1 position on YouTube trending, but unfortunately I was narrowly beaten by 74 million views. But given that again this week North Korea has launched another missile, and many of you guys have expressed concern, I thought today I would address the situation once and for all, and talk a bit about the morning of the missile siren behind the scenes, the general atmosphere and feeling in Japan, and my own views and opinions on the ongoing kind of North Korean crisis. I know being woken up by a missile siren doesn't exactly make me an expert on the ongoing geopolitical situation in East Asia, although it definitely should. But this is a topic that I'm surprisingly well versed in, because it's something that I've pretty much read about every single day for the last 5 years now. And it's an interesting situation because of the contrast in the rhetoric used in the global media and the kind of realities of just everyday life. No doubt right about now lots of clever people in the comment section are writing things like, "I don't have to worry about North Korea, I live in a rainforest in Nicaragua, laugh out loud." But it's important to point out, if God forbid there was some kind of regional conflict, it could quite easily escalate into a much larger scale war, or certainly trigger another global financial crisis, which would ruin things for just about everyone everywhere. So it is a serious situation. Before we get to the depressing bit, however, one of the most interesting things about the missile crisis was seeing how the internet reacted. The YouTube video that I posted got over 9,000 comments alone, as well as the thousands of additional comments on various Facebook pages. And amongst the usual hysteria surrounding North Korea, there were many views and opinions from across the internet on how the situation could potentially be resolved. Man, if I was in Japan, if I was woken up like that, I would swim my arse to North Korea and slap Kim Jong-un. I'd probably most likely die, but fuck it. Yeah, death would be fairly certain at least 35 minutes into the mission. Bears would find Kim Jong-un tasty because of all that cheese he so much enjoys. He's probably the heaviest person in all of North Korea. Bears love cheese, just saying. I don't feel the need to comment on that one. And finally, Jason Todd says, "I wish I could stop this if I had powers." Absolutely, like the ability to teleport cheese-obsessed bears. That would solve it pretty much overnight. So on the morning of the test, I hit it well, but I was genuinely shocked, surprised, and most of all disorientated by what was going on. Being woken up by a North Korean missile warning is probably the worst way to wake up, second only to having a cat unexpectedly jump on your face. But I wasn't that worried at the time, because I knew North Korea had frequently conducted missile tests that were heading in that direction. For example, just a few months earlier, a missile had splashed down off the coast of Hokkaido. So I suspected it was another test, as opposed to the very real threat of a nuclear missile headed my way. The real reason I and many people don't worry about a North Korean missile hitting Japan at this stage is, if North Korea did actually hit Japan with a missile, the world would have an excuse to react and retaliate against North Korea in full force, and it'd be difficult for countries like China to defend it anymore, given that self-preservation is the very essence of North Korea's regime. They know firing missiles at the enemy would jeopardise that, and that it's in their interest more than anyone not to have a missile hit Japan or South Korea or the US. Also, whilst these two missiles did fly over Japan, they also flew at a lofted trajectory. If their trajectories had been detected to crash land in Japan, they could have technically been intercepted by Aegis ballistic missile defence systems spread around the country that should be able to take them down. Nevertheless, many viewers expressed anger at me in the video because of my somewhat carefree attitude. Even angrier at me than at North Korea in some instances, like Helen Griffith, who remarked, "Very sad that this is happening. I've got a 6-year-old son. How do I explain this to him? The man in the video is really insensitive and selfish. That's right, Helen, teach your son about the real villain, the angry, nasty man in the video, and not the nuclear-armed rogue state erratically firing ballistic missiles at their neighbours. With teachings like that, your son will grow up to be a real winner. Dude, next time, wake your lazy ass and get underground like most normal people would do. Yes, quick everyone, let's get down to the underground bomb shelter that doesn't exist. Given Japan doesn't really have any basements or cellars, it's quite hard to do that. Standard procedure is just to hide under a desk. Or in my case, I was fortunate to be in one of the only concrete reinforced structures in the town, so I was in a safe place.
What the hell is he talking? Not very nice when rudely waking him up in the morning.
Well, let me tell you, Mr. Lazy Pants. Mr. Lazy Pants. The healthy time to wake up is 4:30 AM in the morning when the sun just rises up. Why? Because it's the best time to pray, feel the morning breeze, and also drink a warm cup of choco. Also, we can go exercising for a healthier body going to work instead of being lazy on the bed until 9 to 12. Yes, if only the North Korean missile launch had been at 4:30 instead, I could have stood out amidst the howl of air raid sirens, wandering through the morning breeze with a warm cup of choco, whilst looking like a fucking idiot. The morning itself was pretty anticlimactic though. I was travelling with two Japanese friends who were staying in the same hotel, and neither of them were woken up by the air raid sirens or the phone alerts or their TVs going off. And when I talked to them about the North Korean situation over breakfast 2 hours later, they just kind of shrugged their shoulders. They shrugged their shoulders and kind of just dismissed it. And that's kind of the response I often find when talking to Japanese people about it. Yes, they are a bit worried about it, but they are so desensitized to the issue after years of North Korean rhetoric talking about the destruction of Japan and the West. And none of my Japanese friends even seem to discuss the issue unless I raise it first in conversation. That said, it does feature prominently in the Japanese media every day. Just yesterday, the Prime Minister said there would be no bright future. And in many ways, the crisis is playing into the hands of the Japanese government, who are trying to reassert Japan as a kind of a military power and revise the constitution. Since 1947, Article 9 of Japan's constitution has forbid it from using military conflict as a way of resolving international disputes, and the country has relied heavily on the US for its defence. However, the current government has sought to change that and strengthen Japan's military with a great deal of opposition from around the country. And the situation with North Korea is making it harder to argue against an increase in military spending and against revising the constitution. And there's no doubt if the unthinkable were to happen and North Korea attacked Japan, that would change almost overnight. That would be changed in an instant. But whilst the recent missile test didn't worry me, last week's nuclear test did. Ever since I was a kid, I've been both mesmerised and terrified by nuclear weapons. I still remember how surprised I was to discover humans had created something powerful enough to vaporise an entire city in an instant. And having visited Hiroshima and the Atomic Bomb Museum several times now and looked at the photos of mutilated children burned alive and carrying their dead siblings amongst the rubble of the city, regardless of where you stand on their use in World War II, you come out with the hope that they need never be used again. It's just unimaginable. Which is why North Korea making threatening comments about using nuclear weapons to sink Japan or turn the US into ashes isn't something I take lightly, and it is a depressing thought, despite sounding so ridiculously over the top and hyperbolic. Now, the test last week was allegedly North Korea's first hydrogen bomb, and hydrogen bombs are in a whole different league to atomic bombs. They are so much more powerful, far more powerful than the weapons used against Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Now, typically at the point that a country acquires a nuclear weapon, as you'd expect, it becomes too dangerous to even have a conflict. And yet, because America quite rightly sees North Korea as an existential threat due to its nuclear weapons, and there is a small window of opportunity where North Korea hasn't yet completely developed an intercontinental ballistic missile, there is a chance now more than ever that we might see some kind of military intervention within the next 6 to 8 months, especially whilst North Korea is still in that transition phase, developing their first intercontinental ballistic missile that could hit North America or Europe. It seems pretty clear as well that North Korea will never willingly give up its nuclear weapons as well. It's the ultimate insurance policy, especially as Libya and Iraq both suspended their nuclear weapons programs, and both leaders subsequently ended up being hung or being mutilated and stuffed in a fridge. A military conflict does seem unlikely still though, given that the casualties on the Korean Peninsula would be huge. I mean, the city of Seoul, with a population of 25 million people, is within range of an estimated 1,000 artillery pieces, which could kill tens of thousands of people if there was some kind of outbreak. And then there's the risk of China stepping in as well if the US did do some kind of preemptive strike. It's more likely there'll be some kind of incident, for example a plane getting shot down, some artillery being fired, or a missile straying off course. And at the very brink of a large-scale conflict, hopefully both sides will finally sit down and negotiate some kind of resolution, with or without the assistance of Dennis Rodman. Seriously, you know we're all fucked when Dennis Rodman, who is bestest friends with both Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, holds the key to avoiding a potential nuclear holocaust. It sounds like the synopsis of a political satire, a movie about a remarkably underqualified man beating the odds and saving us all from World War III. But until the day Dennis Rodman arrives in Pyongyang clutching an envelope for Kim Jong-un stuffed full of vouchers for the Trump International hotel chain, I will remain on the edge of my seat. With the most recent North Korean missile launch over Japan, do you think people should be wary of moving over to Japan to teach English? Despite all I've just said, no, I don't think that at all. The media might make it appear as though the apocalypse is next Tuesday, and big scary words like World War III from highly credible and objective news websites like the Daily Express. But the reality is life goes on in Japan and South Korea, even as the words get bigger and more direct. Not a great deal has changed. If you cancel a holiday to Asia or give up your dream job, in many ways you've already let them win. Both North Korea and its violent and exaggerated rhetoric, and the media that preys so heavily on our anxieties and fears, and that is no way to live. Make no mistake though, this is something I will continue to monitor closely every day, as I have done over the last 5 years. Anyway, that's all I have to say on the topic for now. Feel free to leave your comments and questions below, and if you're somebody living in Japan who's been affected by this, let us know. And to end things on a slightly more positive note, next week marks the launch of the Abroad in Japan merchandise range. If you haven't already spotted it, this is the For Fuck's Sake t-shirt. Been wearing it recently, I love it, it's awesome, and it's really exciting to finally have a range of 4 or 5 designs worth selling. Really looking forward to it, and I'll be talking about that in the next few days. But for now guys, as always, many thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. I'm off to respond to some important comments and questions.
They have bears in Japan? Really? Like real bears or panda bears?
I mean, panda bears are real bears, but they don't eat people like other bears. The only thing they hunt is bamboo. Now I have to look that up.
What kind of bears?
Black bears, innit? It's black bears.